And loading.
Loading.
Still loading. And good.
Great. So this is the Town of Trustees Personnel and Ordinance Committee meeting on March 8th, and we have started at 5 o'clock and just approved to stream our meetings live on YouTube. For future agendas, it will reflect that will be streaming live on YouTube, and this will be saved in our YouTube. What is it called? Like a file, or I don't know. Are you?
It will be on our YouTube channel.
Album or channel. Okay. All right. So our next item of business is clarification of adopting an ordinance. So since we've hired Clayton, I've asked him to scrutinize our processes, including how we adopt ordinances. I've included this memo in your packet. I've included it at a general meeting as well. The prior procedure for adopting an ordinance was first reading, published in the newspaper, then second reading with public comment, and then enacted within 30 days. The new recommendation is to do the first reading, published in the newspaper, and is enacted in 30 days after publishing in the newspaper. What I found is a little hiccup there. We tried that with the senior rate ordinance, and to reduce the amount seniors pay for their utility bills, and they are, we did the first reading, we published it in the newspaper, we asked for public comment at the next board meeting, and we got public comment. So I'm asking to revisit that tonight, but want to make sure everyone's comfortable with this new way to adopt ordinances. I guess I'm partial to the other way, because I feel like it provides more public comment, but more opportunities for public comment, but I would defer to you all on how best to move forward. And Clayton's also here to answer any questions.
Yeah, before you guys start discussing that, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are minimum standards based on, city versus town from the statute. You guys are within your right to do anything more stringent than that. And so if you like the previous way you did it, you're absolutely okay with doing that. There's pros and cons. You can always publish what most towns do is they publish the entire ordinance in the packet and then ask for public comment at that first reading. And that, quite frankly, the people who care can go to the website easier than it is to find it in the newspaper. But I understand that because you guys have that historical process, that maybe a lot of people are looking for it still in the newspaper. So if you want to do that, that's fine. You're just extending that process of an ordinance, and that's beneficial to the community if you guys decide, or it could be, we're talking about a matter of weeks. And so if you're used to just having your ordinances take about 6 to 7 weeks to pass, then that's fine, versus, the possibility of them passing within, 4 to 5 weeks. And so my advice isn't to do it one way or the other, but you guys had adopted this hybrid, more stringent process than is required by statute. That was my only advice, is that you kind of are taking an extra step that you don't need to, because the first and second reading way to do it, you don't have to wait the 30 days after publication. It goes into effect immediately upon second reading. So, we're kind of mixing apples and oranges, but I did a little bit of a deeper dive on that, and you guys can do it. So if you guys like that better, please feel free to, go back to your other process.
Could you just real quickly walk through what you think the standard process is in other communities?
Standard is, but for a statutory town, is you publish it like basically by notice, not by publication, and then you have a first reading, and then it goes into effect 30 days after the publication. So we had kind of tried to go to, that would be standard. However, I mean, you could have a first, second, third, fourth reading if you guys wanted to. But I think if you were going to add back that first and second reading, you just need to do it. You know, you could do it, just go back to the BOT and say, hey guys, we like this other way better. We're allowed to do this. Is this how we want to continue doing this? By statute, the statute doesn't say to do that. So you're kind of outside of statutory framework, which in my opinion, you would need at least a verbal resolution to go back to the framework that you had before. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. And Molly, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah. So I personally, after living there all these years, my parents don't use technology. They're not going to go in there and look at technology for this. So if it doesn't come out in the newspaper and they don't have a chance to read it, then we're doing the community a disservice. I don't necessarily think we have to have the first and second reading, but I don't believe that we should do anything until 30 days after it's been published in the newspaper and public comment has been given one board meeting after its publication. That's just personally, second reading, you'd be surprised how people read it the first time and then they mull it over and then go, wait a minute, you can't do that. So I've seen it happen. But as long as we can take it back to the following meeting before it is enacted in case we need to change it and then the process starts over, I'm okay with only doing one reading, but it's got to be published in the paper. Can't be just the packet.
Yeah,
No,
I agree with Molly.
The way you have it, you have to publish it in the paper. But you're publishing it after you discuss it and during your first reading. So you're not getting maybe as much of a robust public comment. My preference is, and in dealing with ordinances is just doing a first and second reading without the 30-day publication. But you don't have that framework in place, and you'd be, you can do that. You just have to, there's certain steps we have to go through. So, I mean, from what you're saying, you guys want to go back to the other way. And again, that's fine. By doing it the way Molly suggested, you're not saving any time, whether you call it a second reading or a public comment hearing. You're still waiting, because if there's any substantive changes, you're starting over.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Molly as well, because I think, our community is pretty involved. We see a decently high volume of public participation. And I think that providing that amount of time allows for more people to provide perspective or to get comfortable with buy-in on something. This isn't a place where people like to rush things too much. From my perspective, the only really cumbersome aspect of our process before was actually having to verbally read it at the meeting, particularly for longer ordinances. And I'm not sure that it seemed like that was a time that most people tuned out anyway. So I think if we kept the process we had before, but eliminated the need to actually read the ordinance during a meeting, which could take, as much as 15 or 20 minutes for a longer ordinance, or series of ordinances. We had one meeting that must have been 10 or 15 minutes of me reading. I would like to eliminate that. But everything else I felt like was pretty fine. But you realize,
Shane, nobody else ever did that before you.
Nobody read it?
I said that in the meeting. You don't have to read it. You only have
to read
the title.
That was something Paul Kosnick told me I needed to do. Attorney Kosnick previously.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder if he was joking, because
he might have been yanking my chain.
He sat through all of our other previous meetings, and I was there. Clayton is now attorney number 4 I've sat through. So nope, never before until you. So don't know.
So Clayton, would that be acceptable for us to go back to the way we had done it before, but not do the full reading?
Yes.
Okay. Is that
Gloria,
Yep.
Did you have a request about some modification that could help us resolve the issue that you experienced with the publication timeline?
The only thing that came up was when Kelly had the public comment for the senior rate ordinance and came up during that time and realized, well, what is our process to go back and amend that ordinance or to look at that after that public comment? And that was just the big part where I was like, I kind of had an aha moment of, well, what is our process here when we do receive that public comment, even though we've published it in the newspaper and 30 days from that, it is supposed to be enacted. And yet we've received public comment that's giving us question to the ordinance and potentially revising it. So that was just the one thing where this new process made me question it.
Got it. And Jim, what do you think?
Whatever informs the public and expedites the process. I don't think we need to be sitting here reading for 20, 30 minutes. But if we give a certain period of time to the public and allow them to do their own homework, then we've done our job. That's what I think. So let's move forward.
Great.
So then I'm taking direction of keep the process we had before, but not read the whole ordinance in the meeting.
Yeah, I like that, honestly.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Keep the process that we had before, but not do the whole reading in the meeting. Great. Excellent. Thank you. All right. We are going to move on to the discussion on dog tags. And so we received this citizen letter regarding our budget cut to the dog tags. And this was not anticipating revenue in our revenue line for dog tags. Our current inventory of tags are dated to 2020. We issued 15 dog licenses in 2021 and 1 so far in 2022. Per the prior clerk's request, I did not budget for as an income item for 2022. But I would like to ask the committee, how would you like me to proceed? The citizen brings up some compelling arguments to keep the program. To be clear, we did not delete the program or get rid of the program. We simply just did not budget for income from the program. Matt looked it up and we can get 100 tags for like $40, $50.
$45 plus the taxes.
Okay.
And shipping.
And then if we are, this also brings up, this is our first committee meeting where we've had actual guests here. Public guests in my experience. So I just wanted to double check with the trustees on how to have participation. I know a couple would like to speak on this subject, on the dog tag subject, and was wondering on our protocol for participation in committee meetings, since typically in work sessions, we don't take public comment, but wanted to ask you all on our procedure for committee meetings.
Clayton, do you have a recommendation? So historically, we haven't done any public participation in committee meetings, but I'm curious what you recommend.
Well, I mean, committee meetings are open to the public. There's no requirement that you take public comment. If you were to do it, I would just adopt the same standard and put them, up front and limit the time to 3 minutes per individual. And, it never hurts to hear public comment. I think if somebody's interested in a topic, that you're going to hear about it at a committee meeting or a, BOT meeting. And if you're in committee and you can adjust because you're just an advisory authority versus a decision-making body like the BOT is, it might help the process to take comment, at a committee meeting, but it's your call. You don't have to do it by law.
I like the idea of it. I'm curious, can we do it on a committee by committee basis and have each committee decide, or is this something the whole board of trustees should just say, from now going forward, we'll have the same public comment periods at committee meetings as we've had at full meetings? And I'm also curious to hear what Molly wants to say.
I think because it's a committee meeting, it's not like a work session. We're not trying to hash something out as the governing body. And it's just us discussing what's on there. I have no problem whatsoever, but it needs to be 3 minutes, and it has to be relevant to exactly what we are working on.
Jim?
I'm fine with that.
Great.
Shane?
Yep. So then just kicking back the question to, like, it sounds like we can do that no problem now, but should we adopt that process at our next Board of Trustees meeting for all committees?
I would have to say yes, because it probably does need to be passed by the whole board.
Okay. And then I would say, since we're deciding this on the fly, in the future, I'd say let's have all the comments at the beginning of the meeting, and then we could do the closing as well, as opposed to topic by topic. But since we're already here, I guess we can, at this meeting, do it topic by topic. Does that sound okay with everybody?
Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Yep.
in that case, since I'm not there in person, I defer to Gloria and Jim in terms of kind of facilitating the public comment as we go.
Sure. And for you all online, we do not have any public participants here, but we do have them all online. And so if you would like to make a comment on the dog tags, please raise your hand, and you have 3 minutes and I can time you.
Cool.
Gilbert?
Maybe say dog tags as well as the other topics that we've already discussed so far.
Sure.
Cool.
All right, Gilbert, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Dog tags. I would like to reiterate what Mr. Skinner had said in his letter about the importance of safety of the dog tags. And I believe that it is a safety and health issue within the town of Silverton when dogs are allowed to roam freely. And as a firefighter, and we're going to the fire hydrants and we're having to work around what's left behind by the animals and stuff like that. And I've also encountered when my grandkids have been on their bikes and riding, and dogs have taken off towards the kids, and they haven't been bitten, but we caused one of them to wreck because he was panicked. And I just think it's already an ordinance. I think we need to keep it in place. I think we need to have people pick up after their pets. And I've noticed where I live over on Snowden Street, as people come on and off the scenic, and when their dogs are not on leashes, they seem to have a problem controlling them. And I'm not sure if everybody's aware of it, but there was a dog incident where 2 owners of the pets got in an argument and one got mazed and had to be sent to the hospital. So I believe when the ordinance was put in the 80s, it was because of a safety issue and because after a while the dogs were running in packs. So I would encourage the town to keep the ordinance in effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. And would anyone else like to do a public comment on anything that we have talked about up to this point? Okay. Seeing none, I would open this up for trustee discussion. Again, we did not budget for any income, but the program is still in place, and would welcome any public comment there. There seems to be some confusion that we have gotten rid of the program, but we have not gotten rid of the program.
It's an enforcement issue, correct?
That is how Mr. Skinner,
From what I read in the packet, it's
Yeah.
an enforcement issue. So
Mhm.
that's beyond our purview. That should be taken up with our sheriff's office, correct?
okay,
Well, I'm asking. And also making a statement. Again, I don't think this was being removed off the books. This was more of a explanation for why it didn't show up as a line item. I think everyone at home needs to see the same thing and understand that. Am I wrong?
We still have dog tags, we still have a license book. If
There you
someone
go.
can get a license, they can get a license.
Molly or Shane?
Well, I completely agree with everything Gilbert said. I was attacked by a dog when I was 6 years old before we had moved to Silverton. We'd come for a visit and my grandmother couldn't pick me up fast enough. And it was when the dogs were running in packs. I remember that so vividly. And I was terrified of animals for years. And now I own dogs, but it is an enforcement issue. We need to jump all over the sheriff's department. He doesn't even enforce the leash law that exists as well. So I would order $40, $50 worth of tags and just maybe generalize, take the revenue instead of leaving it on that line item and maybe just make it generalized, into the general journal. What do we call that? The general account.
Miscellaneous revenue on the general fund.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can still report it in the line item at this point. It's just something we didn't budget for as far as revenue goes.
Well, I think $40, $50 for tags is really, really cheap.
Yep. We would agree.
I will get those ordered tomorrow.
Yep, I'm in agreement. I have nothing to add.
Clayton?
One comment, if you have a leash law and you're not enforcing it, then we need to talk with the sheriff's office about that as well.
Okay.
Either if you have a leash law, or whether you want to go to voice control, that's a really contentious issue, but it's probably something you want to put on the agenda for BOT. And, if you have a leash law that isn't being enforced and people are getting in fights or getting maced or kids are getting bitten, like that's a problem. So, it's not only a matter of time before somebody gets bitten and they sue the town because people are walking around town without their dogs on a leash.
Much
I think
agreed.
we need to double check, but I think our leash law includes voice control or like an electric collar. So we just need to double check that.
Yeah, and so like as an example, Pagosa just went away from the counties. We did have the voice control and the electronic leash wasn't specifically addressed, and so if it does that, you guys are a step ahead. But I would just say, physical leashes are, people don't like that, but it's really the safest way for common areas in town. So you might just want to discuss that. Electric collars are fine. Voice control works until it doesn't. And so it becomes a safety issue. And anymore, culture has changed, right? Where people, dogs are treated more and more like people's fur babies, and that's fine. I have dogs. I don't particularly treat my dogs like, children or fur babies, whatever you want to call them. But that doesn't mean I don't understand the people that love their dogs and they eat at the table with them and they sit on their laps when they drive and they walk around with them without a leash. But it's a slippery slope, and you probably should you guys might want to address that. That's all.
I guess like a footnote or an asterisk for Gloria to think about as we're looking at that and further enforcement is also when we go that direction, providing designated off-leash areas.
All right. So I have direction to discuss this with the sheriff's department on enforcement, and then look into designated off-leash areas. Does that sound like consensus on direction?
So we're creating a dog park?
Not necessarily, but the feedback that we've gotten when it's come up in the past is that if we are going to enforce, so there's, to be full disclosure, the conversation we've had in the past is that if we enforce the leash law, then we should have designated off-leash areas within town. And the critical comment to that is that we have hundreds of miles of off-leash areas adjacent to town But a lot of people talk about how that kind of access or the time to do that isn't feasible for the multiple walks a day, and that people need somewhere that's walking distance from their homes where their dogs can be off leash. And so I think without expressing any opinion on what direction we should go there, those are the different viewpoints I've heard on that discussion. And I think we should look into like all aspects of that as we go towards enforcing the leash law, or at least asking the sheriff to enforce the leash law.
Okay. Any more discussion on our dog tags?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
It's like Gilbert's raising his hand a second time.
Oh, Gilbert, did you want to speak again? We can promote you to panelist.
If I could, I just want to take a few seconds. I would like the board to also consider when they're talking, also bringing up the point of picking up after your pets. I think that's something that needs to be brought up at the same time. Again, thank you for your time.
And Todd and I were just talking about this, and I guess in the past, we've done kind of a volunteer cleanup day in the spring to clean up some dog poop around town. So we were thinking of reinstating that at some point this spring. A lot of talk about dogs.
Yeah, but
yes, Molly?
sometimes it just chalks itself up. Sometimes it just chalks itself up to having the owners be responsible, though, too. I don't know. I don't let my dog go in somebody else's yard unless I'm carrying a baggie with me. So Gilbert's not wrong. That is something that we really do need to address. But I think the only way to create something like that is to stick some monetary fine to it in order to make it have some teeth. Am I wrong?
No, I hear you there, Molly.
That whatever. So, yeah. I mean, we can encourage it, but until people actually begin to be good humans and they treat their dogs like fur babies, but they don't clean up after them like you would change a baby diaper. So it is kind of disheartening. I agree.
Yeah, I think it's a cultural shift more than anything else. I have trouble seeing one of our deputies get out of their car to write a ticket to somebody whose dog pooped in somebody's yard. But I do think we should encourage it and figure out ways to encourage it more.
All right. That is my direction. Are we okay to move on?
Yes.
Great. So this is, let's see. We received public comment on February 28th meeting regarding our senior rate ordinance. We were asked to revise the senior rate ordinance to include long-term renters. The intent of this ordinance was to reduce costs for senior residents on their utility bills that we provide as a town. And as written, it does not include renters. And I know that we have Molly and Jim here from the Finance Committee as well. So since this is now an ordinance, I brought it to the Personnel and Ordinance Committee for further review and scrutiny.
I'll shoot this one first. Kelly is not wrong. And we did not think of people who rent their land. So I think if we include it with the correct terminology, because I'm not talking about long-term renters, because long-term renters, say if you're in certain apartments, your utility rates already included. So it would be, does that make sense?
Yes.
Because this is to address, they own their property, but they're renting their land. They own their home, but they're renting their property. So I don't know how we need to word it, but Kelly is 100% right. That excludes somebody like her husband from receiving that because for just that reason. So does everybody agree with that statement?
Shane, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with that, but I'd like to think if there's a way for us to be slightly more expansive, because I do think there are tenants who pay the utilities whose leases are not inclusive of utilities. And if we have, elderly renters who are also responsible for the utilities, I'm not sure how we can avoid, minor fraud there. But if that's something that we could brainstorm on, or that staff can brainstorm on, I do think it would be great for residents, whether or not they are renting the land or renting an apartment or a house, all be kind of treated equally in their responsibility with respect to utilities.
Matt, you have your hand up?
Yeah. So it is possible in our accounting software, Cassell, on its utilities application, I guess you call it. There is information to have a landlord listed and the person responsible for paying the utilities. So we can have that divvied out to where if there are landlords that pay their own utilities, that can be denoted, or if the tenant who is a senior is paying utilities, or just any tenant is paying utilities rather, then that can be denoted in our software. So that way the utilities are in the name of the person paying them while still having the landlord's name on file for backup or whatever you need. So it is possible to have it to where we can make sure that if the tenant is a senior, then they are getting the discounted rate. Whereas if the utilities are included in the lease, then the landlord is just getting their normal rate.
So I'd be in full support
Beautiful.
of going that direction. And then if that gets adopted by the board, I'd also ask if the town could host a series of information sessions at the senior center to help people get signed up appropriately through that payment software.
Absolutely.
And we have been working with Carrie to get the list to make sure, the impacts and everything, and kind of get an idea of how many seniors would be eligible for this. So that would be a very easy thing to do, is to promote this with the seniors with Carrie.
Cool.
Jim?
Perfect.
All right.
Did we have any public comment on this topic?
Gilbert, your hand has been raised. I'm going to lower your hand. If you do want to talk, just please raise your hand again.
Flower, stop. Speaking of fur babies, there's one barking behind me.
So seeing no public comment on this one, I just wanted to clarify my direction is basically this. If the tenant is responsible and they are a senior for paying their utilities, then they are eligible for the discount. Yes,
As delineated by town clerk. I don't know.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Because if he can figure it out, then that's the way it should go.
All right. All right, great. Thank you for that. Well, just putting this notes together real quick. Okay. So are we good to move on to our proposed ethics ordinance? Okay, great. So Clayton suggested drafting this ordinance to add to our municipal code in efforts to start addressing ethics in our organization. I have included the draft ordinance in your packet for you to discuss and give direction on how to proceed. Clayton has also offered to give a presentation on ethics at our trustee retreat at the end of April or the beginning of May, whenever we schedule that. And he's also here to discuss this with us. Thanks for joining us, Clayton. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Do we want to start with public comment, or does Clayton, do you want to provide an overview of the draft ordinance first?
Sure. You guys have the ordinance in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure I have the same ones that we're not. So I'm not talking in circles here. So the ordinance itself is taken directly from state statute and the requirements of state statute. So the town has always been subject to the statute. Obviously, the proposed ordinance is just to codify it in the municipal code, which I think is important, for people to see at a local level. And, it obviously changes the language from state officers and state requirements and state employees to local government and town, et cetera. But it pretty much is, it's very much in line with the statute. And so I'm not going to go through line by line unless you really want me to, but it's pretty cut and dry here. I mean, the major issues that we see in for ethics for board members is overlap with personal and financial conflicts. We don't see as much in a town, in our smaller towns and even some smaller cities, coming up against any sort of like financial issues for election process. So it really comes down to making sure the board and its officers understand their role when it comes to conflict. And then, of course, when it comes to disclosure of certain, privileges that the town gets as far as executive session issues, et cetera. So I don't have any really specific comment. It just, if you've read it and you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. Again, the major issues we're going to see, and that board members will, and even as even as a commission, as an advisory board, you're subject to the same thing where you can't advise if you have a personal or financial interest in a certain subject, and that can be confusing. And so, in the regulation, it says, of course, if you think there's an issue, you need to bring it to your supervisor or staff, and then that can be brought to the town attorney. So, and then there's a way to, if somebody's just refusing to recuse themselves for any reason, there's a way that the board in 1F can basically involuntarily recuse somebody, basically kick them out of an executive session if they shouldn't be talking about something, and or if they have a conflict, to ask them to to step out during the discussion. So pending your questions.
Thank you.
Would you like me to take public comment at this time? Do we have any public comment that would like to? Hi, Albert. We have you on.
How you doing?
Good. We've got 3 minutes.
Oh, I don't need that much time. I just want to tell you how proud I am of all of you and Clayton for tackling this, and just to help to clarify for the community, even though there were things that were probably already rules or whatever, but just putting this into an understandable format and embracing it. And I'm just really proud of all of you, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Albert.
Thank you, Albert.
Do we have any other public comment? Seeing none, I open it up for trustee discussion.
I've got none. I think it's a great thing, and it already existed by state statute. So us just codifying it just reflects what we probably should have done years ago, but nobody really thought it was necessary at those times. So.
Yep, I'm good too.
Good.
Tim?
This is one that I've been pushing for a long time, and I'm glad we're finally having this come to floor and we're going to vote on it. This is one we need. This is one our community needs. Thanks, guys.
I do have one edit. If we could just make the gender in here a little bit more neutral. It is a lot of him and his. So I was wondering if I could change those pronouns around. All right. Thanks for the giggle, Molly. I'll take that as an approval.
What do we change it to?
They are theirs.
Yeah, them, they,
Yeah.
since we're both male and female on the board.
All right.
Excellent. Well, then I will be putting this on our next agenda.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Clayton. All right. And now moving on, I'm going to give you, is it okay to move on, everyone? Are we all good with this?
Mhm.
Okay, excellent.
Mhm.
So I wanted to give you an update on our special events ordinance. It will be coming before the board again on Monday. I know that last time I had put it in front of the board and then I pulled it because we had received some comments from event organizers worried that they can't have completed packets in to secure their dates. So a lot of the times the event organizers need to secure the dates and then they can kind of put the complete packet together for us in a timely manner. So this is something that we decided to pull and make sure that it was practical for event organizers. We contacted several event organizers. We received 2 responses on our ordinance and how, if any kind of edits and stuff. So we feel pretty confident bringing it back to you all on Monday. But I thought I should give you a quick update since I did pull it kind of abruptly before it was supposed to go in front of the entire board. So that was your update. Any questions on that one?
Any public comment on this one?
Oh, yes. Do we have any public comment? I do not see any.
Great.
All right. And the last one is discussion on a compensation study. In writing the new handbook, I attempted to do my own compensation study for pay ranges and exempt statuses for employees. The job descriptions have been updated and will be published once I come up with a compensation ranges and exempt, non-exempt statuses. I realize that my analysis might be looked on as biased since I am an employee of the town. So I did send you my report anyways to give you an idea of where we should be, but I recommend going through a third party for this type of analysis. This study is an important tool as we consider growing our staff, recruiting talent in the area, and making sure that we're justly compensated. It will also give us the tools to be competitive with our neighbors and update a decade of old pay structures. So I sent you all kind of my work and what I had done. And honestly, the consultants, if we were to go out for a proposal for this, I did contact one consultant just to get a price range of what we might be looking at. And she had quoted 4,500 when I gasped, when I did like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. She dropped it down to 3,100. So it still was a lot more than what I had anticipated paying for that kind of a study, because they do utilize the CML compensation study that's done every year, which I utilize for my own research. So I would open it up for any questions. I would like to get a compensation study of some sort done before our budget cycle kind of ramps up in June or July with staff preparing budgets, and then we bring it to the trustees in the fall. So having an idea of what our compensation should be, or at least a recommendation to update that would be beneficial. Shane?
Yeah, so if the board were to be comfortable with your potential or perceived bias, would you prefer to expand the compensation study internally, or are you planning to request that we get it done by a third party either way?
You know, I've thought about this, and just the perception of me doing it in-house might not be looked on as favorable because there is a bias that I am a town employee. And so I would recommend a third party to conduct this. And I'm wondering if maybe we can find a little cheaper than $3,000, because that just seems just a lot of money for basically looking at the same information that I can look up.
Got it. I would say my only comment to what you sent us is that most of the other towns were larger than Silverton by an order of magnitude, and that it would be helpful to see some other rural towns about our size as well.
Right, and that's pretty limited with the study that I was able to look at from CML to try and find like communities with like job descriptions was quite a challenge. So I do think that a third party could probably do this a little better.
Cool, thank you.
So Shane kind of stole what I was going to say, that although it's very well laid out, yeah, these towns are not comparable to what we are. They have way more people, way more money, way bigger tax base. So I completely agree. See, I guess just put your feelers out and see how cheap somebody really likes us.
Is it possible this is something DOLA could do for us for free or just staff time cost?
Yeah, and I could ask them that and also see if we could get like a small planning grant or something like that to help cover the costs. That's
Cool.
a great idea. Tim?
Not wanting to be repetitive, I agree with what Shane and Molly said.
Okay. So I will try and get us some quotes by our next meeting to kind of give us an idea of either what we should budget for 2023, but preferably like to get it done in 2022.
And check and see if there are any DOLA grants available.
Yep, can do that as well. And that is the end of my agenda here. So that went really fast and smooth. Thank you, guys. Is it because I set it up saying we only have 15 minutes per thing?
Comment.
Yeah.
And that's with public comment too. No, it's because I think it was a well laid out.
Gilbert, we see that you have a comment.
Yes, I was just wondering if that information you were talking about just now is available to the public. If it is, it wasn't in the packet. I'm just wondering.
Correct. Because it was my internal study that I don't feel like it is a valid study. I wanted to disseminate it to the trustees without disseminating it to the public yet, because I don't feel like it's good information. It has to do with personal salaries at this point. So I just wanted to kind of keep that close to home until we got an official study done.
All right, great. Great job tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Gilbert, just a question. Do you like this format?
Yes, I do. I really like it. I think it's great. I think there's a lot of things that could be discussed prior to a meeting. So I think it's moving through this like you folks did tonight is, I think, get the input here. It's going to help your meetings move quicker. But thanks again for opening it up on the short notice like tonight.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then we do have our executive session at 6:30, so we have a little bit of a break in between, but we'll be on the same link coming back here at 6:30.
Okay,
Thank you very
hopefully
much.
mine will work this time. If you can send me a new one, because
I
mine
will.
did not work.
All right, I'll send you a
Thank
new
you.
one.
Okay.
Thank you,
bye.
everyone. Okay.